Welcome to the Lincoln City Council meeting of July the 18th. Let us rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a period of silent meditation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated. In accordance with LB 898, a copy of the Open Meetings Act is posted at the back of the chamber. The order of business for the City Council is as follows. The clerk will call the items listed on the agenda under public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on an item should come forward after the clerk reads that item. The applicant and those in favor should speak first, then those opposed. The applicant may then make one short rebuttal. Each speaker should begin by stating their name, address, and whether you are speaking in favor or in opposition to an item. Testimony is limited to 5 minutes per speaker. After all public hearings, the council will vote on resolution items listed under third reading. On the second and last meetings of the month, of which this is one, immediately prior to adjournment, anyone may speak on an issue not on the agenda for this date, nor planned for a future agenda. Will the clerk read the first item of business?
Our first item of business today for our City Council meeting Monday, July 18th, 2022 is our consent agenda, sections 1 and 2.
Anyone wishing to speak on an item on the consent agenda can step forward. Anyone wishing to speak on a consent item? All right, we may proceed.
We can now vote on these items. I'll be reading item 1A, approving the agreement for reimbursement between the City and State of Nebraska Department of Transportation for the resurfacing of US 34, beginning at I-180 and extending south to O Street, introduced by McGinnis.
So moved.
Second.
All right, a first by McGinnis, second by Councilwoman Raybold. Madam Clerk?
Raybold,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Washington.
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0. Section 2, items 2A through 2C was introduced by Schob.
So moved. Second. You'll read that out and then I'll.
Yep.
If
And
you would.
No. You'll make my motion now before you read it or after you?
I can read it.
Okay.
Item 2A, setting the hearing date of Monday, August 1st, 2022 at 3 p.m. on the application of Enjoy 520 Inc., doing business as Itsumo Ramen for the Class I liquor license, located at 1451 O Street, Suite 300.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to amend item 2A and change the date due to a clerk error from August 1st to July 25th and the time from 3 p.m. to 5:30 p.m.
Second.
Thank you very much. Raybold was second. All right, let's vote.
Bowers,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Washington.
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0.
Okay, now for the main motion.
Bowers,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Washington.
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0. Okay, that concludes our consent agenda. We shall now move on to section 4, our public hearing and liquor resolutions. I'll be calling item 4A and 4B together. Application of Lanka Lion LLC, doing business as the Metal Grill for a Class I liquor license located at 5500 South 56th Street, Suite 8, and the related manager application of Susanta D. Vera Singha.
All right. Is anyone here for this first item?
I'm going to swear you in, so please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth as you verily believe it to be?
I do.
Thank you.
If you wouldn't mind your name and address for the record.
Sure. My first name is Susantha. Last name is Veera Singha. I'm currently at 1201 Lincoln Mall. in Lincoln, Nebraska. But the business address is at 5505 South 56th, the former Parthenon.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
What can you tell us about your business?
Sure. So I started the business in Hickman, Nebraska. What the reason for the name Mettle, M-E-T-T-L-E, reason I came up with that name is the circumstances under how the restaurant opened. The restaurant that was formerly there abruptly went out of business, and that was right before the holidays. And myself and 35 employees found ourselves without a job. So I had to make a decision, either go the left road or the right road, go out and try to find financing and try to put all of our staff back together, or go out and find a job somewhere else. So I chose the less road taken, and I found somebody who would loan me money. I went out, set up an LLC, wrote a menu, and then 2.5 weeks later, I reopened the business and put all 35 employees back to work. And we gave them all, paychecks, back checks, all the way, so they can at least enjoy the holidays with their families. And the word mettle means to persevere under difficult times, and that's exactly what we did. And this was in 2019, even through 2019, we went through the pandemic. Instead, when we had to shut down the restaurant, I went out and got insurance and all the staff, and we just did deliveries to all the people in our community. So I kept everybody employed, and we, stayed true to the mantra to be resilient, and we showed our mettle. And that's exactly what we want to do in Lincoln, is to bring that restaurant here. It's closer to home, but the whole theme of the restaurant is, we want to have, stories of the faces in the community who have displayed resilience, who've shown mettle. And, as our guests come in, those stories and those photos of people in the community, we want to display those stories throughout the restaurant as people sit down and dine in the restaurant.
Well, thank you very much. Does anyone have questions? Councilwoman Rabel.
Is the restaurant open now?
Currently, this will be our last week. So it's currently open in Hickman.
And
Yes,
then you're
ma'am.
all moving to Lincoln.
Yes, ma'am. So we're hoping to open about late into August.
Okay. And the menu is going to be?
It's contemporary American. It's all American comfort food. It's things that we grew up with, but it's training also the young chefs. People who do still have a passion for cooking. It's been a very difficult time for restaurants, especially to hire staff. But I've been fortunate to find the diamonds in the rough who still love what they do to cook. So it's all contemporary American food made from scratch.
Terrific. Well, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Next item.
I'll be calling item 4C, manager application of Caleb A. James for CCW LLC, doing business as Huhat Mongolian Grill, located at 2525 Pine Lake Road, Suite 200 and 201 North 66th Street.
Well, it's hard to follow up a story like his. My name is Caleb James. I reside at 5 Josephine Street, Omaha, Nebraska, 68138. I am the district manager of all the Omaha locations, Council Bluffs, and Lincoln. Today I'm here for 2525 Pine Lake Road, which is right by the Super Saver, and we already currently have one at the 66th Street location, which is Gateway Mall as well.
Okay. All right. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. James? Okay.
Okay,
Well,
thank
good
you.
luck.
I'll be calling item 4D, manager application of Paul J. Marshall for Yojava Inc., doing business as the filling station, located at 200 South 18th Street. Is there anyone here to testify on item 4D?
It doesn't look like Mr. Marshall is here, so we'll move on.
Okay.
Madam Chair, seeing no one else come forward during the public hearing portion to testify on these items, I'd like to move approval of item 4A through 4D, please.
Thank you.
Second.
Second by Councilman McGinnis.
Okay. Bowers,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Washington.
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
That concludes our Section 4, Public Hearing Liquor Resolutions. We'll now move on to Section 5. I'll be calling 5A. Approving a contract between the City and Downtown Lincoln Association for downtown management and maintenance services for a 4-year term.
Good afternoon, council and members of the council. I am Todd Ogden, president of the Downtown Lincoln Association, 206 South 13th Street, Suite 101. We are here for our contract yet again, so we're back for 4 more years after working with the city to figure out how to continue to extend and figure out what our goals were moving forward. So appreciate our council reps, Mr. McGinnis, and working with us throughout, and Tammy Ward as well on our board as we talk about our processes and our priorities moving forward for downtown Lincoln. So this contract reflects 4 years with 2 2-year renewals and reflects both our management and maintenance BIDs. So our regular work of service for all of that, including some CSM budgetary items, which include some of the extra maintenance issues that were added a few years ago with the CSM additions. And happy to answer any questions we have. We also will have our actual annual budget, which every year our annual budget also goes to the council for approval. So that will come probably shortly here. So I'll be back here again in the next couple of weeks to talk about the actual budget, but this contract does reflect budget items projected for the next 4 years.
Does anyone have questions? Well, thank you, Todd, for doing such a good job with DLA, and it's a good partnership we have with the city.
Appreciate it.
All right, next item.
I'll be
Oh,
calling-
I'm so sorry. I always forget this. This is why I ran such an efficient meeting last week. All right. Would anyone like to speak in support?
And this to speak in support.
Yes. Yes.
I sign first or later.
Whenever you'd like to.
Terry Pope Gonzalez, founder of the South Salt Creek Community Area Neighborhood Association. There are 2 of them in case you get confused. South Salt Creek Community Organization is the one that sold us down the river. I think this young man is doing an absolutely wonderful job. I don't let my people come to Lincoln, Nebraska, but I do show them different pictures of what he does, okay? So, like I said, it is Terry Pope Gonzalez, 349 South 1st Street. So when you come by, an upside down flag does not mean disrespect. It is the international flag that is flown upside down by the United States of America, and it means distress. And the house is in distress. But that's not what I'm here for. I'm here to tell you that man, that young man does an absolutely wonderful job. Every time I'm downtown, he actually picks up the paper do you do that on purpose? He picks up the paper in front of me. And not to look underneath my skirt, I'm an old lady, but he really, really tries to make it look outside and to make it look good. And, you know, Tammy Ward does too, and I really hope she's doing well. Now, we all know that I am extremely mean. I'm not from here. I am from Denver, Colorado. So we have a different kind of whatever you want to put the word in, okay? So my phone number is 402-310-8311. But as you can tell, I don't internet in any way, shape, or form. I don't have time to. I take care of the old people and the young people. And like I said, we are for him. Can we do him like a 10-year contract? You guys do that? No? I think he would do good. And then he would have job security. You get paid? You get paid? Okay. Now see, pay him. Pay him good. So I'm for favor. You want me to put favor? Because
Thank
I'm
you.
not always for favor. Okay?
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Anyone else to testify in support? Anyone to testify in opposition? All right. We move on.
I'll be calling item 5B, miscellaneous 22008, application of MAK development to allow for reasonable accommodation under Chapter 1.28 of the Lincoln Municipal Code to allow 9 unrelated persons to reside together as a family as the term is defined in the Lincoln zoning ordinance on property generally located at 315 North 35th Street.
Thank you. With the applicant, please come forward.
I'd like to thank the council very much for the opportunity. My name is Ryan Watson. I'm the attorney and represent MAC Development LLC, the applicant for the reasonable accommodation. I guess first I'd like to give you a little bit of background because I think the council's familiar with these reasonable accommodation requests. I don't believe it's the first one that this council's heard of, but we're asking for a reasonable accommodation for the definition of family. And the purpose of that is because of the way family is defined in the Lincoln City Code, it prevents three or more unrelated persons from living together that may have a communal interest in doing so. And the communal interest that is present in our situation is sobriety. And unfortunately, and I don't think I really need to point to a whole lot of statistics, but drug use and alcoholism is a problem with our communities. It's a problem with every community, regardless of race, creed, color, or religion. Now, what we're asking for is a reasonable accommodation request so that we can house up to 9 individuals in a sober living setting. And the reason that we're asking for this is because, unfortunately, for members of the community who may be suffering from drug addiction and alcoholism, when they come out of whatever initial treatment that they've endured, whether it be through an incarcerated facility or whether it be through their own admittance into an in-house rehabilitation program, eventually when they get done with that, they have to have a place to go. And unfortunately, a lot of times their own families do not provide them sober living environments. And so the purpose of what we're offering and what we offer to the community is that regardless of what friends or family you may have come from, we have a sober living spot for you. We have a spot that can help you complete your sobriety, that can help you endure your sobriety and keep that going. Unfortunately, most people, when they relapse, it's because of the friends that they've had around them. It's because of the exposures that they've had around them. And what we deal with people kind of in their most tender times of recovery when they're coming out. And what we offer them is say, we can get you a safe space. We can get you a safe and affordable space, because unfortunately, a lot of people that are transitioning out of those institutions, whether it be a state incarceration facility or a rehab and treatment facility, they simply are coming off, they're unemployed. It's a very, very small segment of our society that can afford to go and endure that kind of treatment and come right back out on our feet financially. And by allowing this accommodation, essentially what the city council can do is provide a safe place for these people to go. These people, they want to live in the same residential zones you do. They want residential zones that are free of noise pollution, that have nice green areas, that are low traffic and low density. They don't all want to just live right downtown when they get out. That's not where they want to be. That's not conducive to their rehabilitation, and that's not conducive to their sobriety. And ultimately, what's important to guarantee that they don't undergo the recidivism that our criminal justice system tries to prevent is that they help maintain that sobriety. So we are not a long-term facility by any means. You may compare us to the likes of something like Oxford House, and I think that is kind of the most common one that people are aware of. We operate a little differently. We operate in a lot of our clients that we see, sometimes we don't think they're appropriate for our care because they've moved on. We have clients that essentially want a little bit more supervision than what an Oxford House is essentially going to provide for them. Now, and there is some debate internally about whether that's the greatest modality for recovery, but we think that we've identified a program and a plan that will simply appeal to just giving them the sober living space. We aren't here to try to provide any kind of therapy. We aren't providing any kind of medication. We aren't providing the treatment. We are simply wanting to provide the roof. That's all. And then we will gladly facilitate whatever therapy, treatment, and recovery options that those individuals are looking for. Because we understand that we don't believe in a one-size-fits-all policy. We don't. But we simply believe that there needs to be a policy in place and an accommodation to be made to allow these people to have a place to live. And with that, I would ask if any council members would have any questions. I would be glad to answer them.
Councilwoman Ribble.
Yes, thank you so much for coming down. I am not familiar with Michael House and your programming, and so could you tell us in a little bit more detail how much individuals are charged to participate in a house? How do they get selected? What proof of their recovery or clinician certification that they are recovered must they show, and to, you know, how is the Michael House organized, and is it one big corporation for this house? And I believe you have another item on the agenda for a different house. So help us understand the programming and how it works. Thank
Gladly.
you.
With the two houses that we have on the agenda today, they're essentially structured the same, but basically the rent is kind of determined by the overall cost and the number of individuals we can fit in any given structure. So as far as these two go, I believe the rent is $700 per month, but that also includes food, room and board, transportation services, drug testing, and the entire operation runs off a consent agreement. Every member in the house has to consent basically to the rules of the house and to the drug testing that's required to go on to be able to maintain their residence in the house. It's staffed by one supervisor, 24 hours a day, and that staff supervisor essentially is the one who basically does the accounting and the accommodating, and ensuring that everybody has done what they're supposed to and required to under their agreements. It's completely furnished, and that is again to assist them in the transitional aspect. We usually discourage anybody, we rarely have anybody stay longer than 9 months, and we'd absolutely discourage anybody staying longer than 12. And the reason is because we want to kind of keep that available for those who need it, and we would expect people after about 9 to 12 months to be transitioning out of the need of having furniture supplied, basic toiletries, food, and things like that supplied. We would expect them to be transitioning out. As far as what programming is offered, we don't really offer any programming. We make spaces available in the rooms for those who may want to offer or administer their own 12-step programs. We certainly work with anybody's providers as far as what programming they're going through. We have numerous individuals who can come both from, say, a parole or a probation, come immediately out of parole or probation, who will have a plethora of items that they will have to meet, and they will have very strict programming. But at the same time, we can have an individual who comes out of an inpatient rehab facility who has little programming other than just their outpatient follow-up and maybe some work materials that their provider's having them work through. The idea is that we facilitate both of that, and we get that directly from their programming provider. And again, if they don't follow through necessarily with their programming, that's not necessarily, we don't oversee and supervise that. That's going to have their own consequence. Does that make sense? We are strictly concerned about their sobriety. If they miss a meeting or if they miss a day of work that may have an effect on their probation, we don't believe that that should necessarily be the reason to kick them out of the home. But as long they need to maintain sobriety, they need to maintain compliance with all state, local, and federal regulations, of course. But that's essentially what we're holding them to.
I do have a few more questions,
Sure.
so thank you very much. Is MAC Development a nonprofit organization?
It is not a nonprofit organization. It is a for-profit organization. It is owned locally. It is a Nebraska domesticated LLC, and it is attempting something And I understand there may be a little bit of a criticism about a for-profit venture going out into this arena, but the problem is this also contains a lot of risk. It contains a drastic amount of risk. And so we would simply just ask that because we are a for-profit model, that you don't simply look away from that, because it's the for-profit model that allows this risk to be endured by the private market rather than constantly having to come to the public table and to the public dole to try to get something like this accomplished. Again, other than a reasonable accommodation for the definition of family.
And does the Mac Development company, do they own each one of the homes?
They would. Mm-hmm.
And then is that fee that is established per month, is it based on some of the expenses that you outlined, and does it include repair and maintenance? And it sounds like it includes all utilities. Does it include the percentage of real estate taxes that?
Yeah, absolutely. It covers the whole gamut. They basically have nothing else to pay for complete room and board other than the monthly payment of $700 that would cover everything from there going forward. And again, that's why the model does kind of vary and depend on how many residents you can accommodate. With at the same time, you don't want to get in a situation where you're simply bringing too many people in, that it gets unwieldy and you really can't have any enforcement there.
So if you have 9 residents times 750, that's 6,750 a month. And so I guess you're saying that would cover the totality of the expenses.
Yep, that covers the totality expenses as well as the full-time staff, the drug testing that has to incur. Often we have vouchers that are in place for rides and transportation included if we can't do it, or if it can't be accommodated by us directly. So all that would be included in there, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Does anyone else have any other questions?
I had a couple questions. Can you tell me who developed this model that you operate under?
Michael Corrado, the owner, had developed it. It was essentially kind of what we had seen. Initially, it was his outset in a real estate development that he was approached by several people about turning them into landlords. If anybody's had experience with that, may often get approached by the Oxford House to say, let's turn this into an Oxford House. And that's very lucrative for the landlord, because the Oxford House basically covers all the litigation and all the other expenses that it may take to get that operation up and running. But at the same time, often was complained about by that model is that there's little to no enforcement. You'd often see several of the neighbors in the neighborhoods complaining because the Oxford House model is self-governed. Sometimes that self-government doesn't necessarily work. And more importantly, it often lacks a point person for the neighborhood to understand and deal with. And that's kind of where our model takes a little bit different. It's more of a top-down executive approach rather than a grassroots model that the Oxford House is.
So your model is not a self-governing model like the Oxford House has. So like members can't like vote each other out or whatever.
Correct.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned earlier that you help facilitate options for treatment. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. Well, and so again, we can have in a house with 9 members, we could have 3 members who are from a parole and a probation service, and several other members who are just out of an inpatient rehab. Oftentimes when people are coming out of inpatient rehabilitation, they have follow-up outpatient that they're still required to do as part of their rehabilitation and treatment. And so transportation needs to be done with that. And part of that may also include certain 12-step meetings or a number of 12-step meetings per week that they're wanting to see or have accomplished. So we'd facilitate those as well. Now, in comparison to the probationer or parolee, the probationer or the parolee who is staying with us, they may have much stricter meetings that their probation officer is demanding. And in that sense, in working with them, what they do and what often the probation officer or the parole officer is looking for is, who's the contact? They're asking this typically of the parolee or the probationer. Who are you staying with? Where are you staying? How do we know that they're okay? How do we know the rest of the people in that house are not gang related or using drugs or under a felony warrant themselves. And that's usually the conditions that are placed in probation as well. So oftentimes you can have probationers and parolees that will come out and they find great difficulty in finding their own place that they can fit under all those, under the rubric that they're presented to get off probation and parole. So it's having the flexibility to work with those programs and work with them directly that we think kind of helps facilitate, again, that tender moment when they're out, when they're first kind of having to take care of themselves and be on their own and find their own roof.
You mentioned that, this is let me ask this question first. Can you explain to me a little bit about what is the accommodation is that more people can live together under one roof? Can you explain to me a little bit more about like what the benefit is that these folks would get by having more people live together?
Well, and that's often, and I guess we could relate back, and unfortunately, I wish I would have brought a little bit more data with me here about that, but that's kind of the nature of the 12-step Alcoholics Anonymous program in itself, is that you have recovery through accountability. Okay, and the more people that you involve in your recovery program, the more accountable that you have to become to it. If I'm living by myself and I'm prohibited from using drugs under a condition of probation or parole, how do you ever know that I've done that? It's a lot easier for me to do drugs, to be under the influence, to let those 12 to 24 hours go by of when I'm under the influence of that drug or alcohol if I'm by myself. But if I'm constantly in a house where I'm interdependent upon you and I to keep the bathroom clean, to keep the kitchen clean, to make breakfast, to have these things there, it presents itself more like a family. Does that make sense? In the same right, your child, before you were to go off to college, okay, it's that difference between him being in the home versus them being out of the home creates a little bit more of accountability. You know what they're doing, you know when they're doing it. You have an idea of when they're out of the house, when they're in the house. You're able to make sure that they're keeping their things clean and orderly. You're able to kind of assist them in getting them where they need to be. We kind of are that initial phase before they leave the nest. Does that make sense?
So what I'm hearing you say is that it's more about accountability rather than like social supporting each other. It's more about like making sure that people are doing what they need to be doing as opposed to like building each other up.
I guess I wouldn't want to lean and say that it's more of one than the other. I think for each person under recovery, they can find more value in one side of that statement versus the other side. Someone who maybe just have a little bit more natural accountability to themselves, maybe they find a greater benefit in the social sharing and in having the shared experiences that they're sharing at night, just watching TV or bunking in a room. Whereas somebody who maybe doesn't have that kind of natural sense of accountability, maybe they don't get as much from the sharing aspect, but they're learning more about how to be accountable to others. They're learning more about what it's like when someone fails to be accountable to them. And so in that sense, maybe they're realizing then that this is why accountability works, that none of us live on an island unto ourselves. We all live for each other in one facet or another, as independent as all of us may want to be. That's simply not how it works. And so we think that having that accountability in the home is also kind of a lesson in a social setting to help them transition back into what we would consider regular society.
Thank you. And another question that I have is if this reasonable accommodation are for folks who are recovering from substance abuse, but these individuals have not been identified yet because they're not living in this place yet, are there specific substances that would bar someone from entry? Are there specific substances or specific situations or instances that would make a person that's seeking this reasonable accommodation unable to live in your facility or your home?
As far as a prior condition, generally not. I mean, it really doesn't matter which substance you've been addicted to, as long as you agree to not use it while you're in our facility and agree to test for it. There's going to be very little reason to exclude you there. The only other time that I could see it ever being a concern is if there's a protection order between two individuals in the house together. And that is usually, that's screened out prior in advance. That's the only other concern. We keep our houses gendered separately, so that we don't really have, or at least it reduces the concern of any kind of impropriety in that regard.
And the last question I have, if I can, when someone's come to seek to live at an Oxford house, is there, or I'm sorry, in MKA or MAK, I apologize. We have two of them kind of going on at the same time, so they're kind of mixing in my mind a little bit. When someone comes to live at one of your homes, do they have to have proof that they were just released from treatment, or do they have to have a substance abuse evaluation or a diagnosis, or is it based on self-reporting?
99%, I don't think we've ever had a situation where someone has come in simply self-reporting, but assuming they would, I don't know that we would necessarily turn them away. I think there would be a part of the process is an interview that's done with the house manager before they're allowed to stay, but I think there would certainly be some inquiry in that portion of why and when and how, and are you sure that this is appropriate for you? Typically, someone who's going to be coming in on a self-reporting scenario, they're going to be more appropriate for an Oxford house, and we're going to make that recommendation. We've had a couple situations where people have come in and have expressed concern with some of the house rules that we would have, and simply didn't like that, and we made it simple to them. This may not be appropriate for you. You may, an Oxford house that has a little bit more self-governing lifestyle that you may want to take advantage of on a longer duration, that's certainly more appropriate. And we've actually had individuals come out of our program and transition into an Oxford house. So that's, we find ourselves, we don't consider ourselves identical with them because although it's not a lot, the supervision that we do offer, we find ourselves, I think, in between the institution and Oxford house.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I have more questions, but if you wanted me to hold them off.
Does anyone else have another question before we go back to Councilwoman Raybould? Go ahead.
So I was, you had mentioned working with probation and parole, and could you tell us a little bit more? Are most of the individuals that participate in this program, are they referrals from DHHS, probation, parole, or?
The majority are referrals from probation or parole. And we see that, I would say that makes up the majority of them. And that's just simply because that's ultimately the population that can benefit from our services the most. And at the same time, probation officers and parole officers have been very happy with the model that we've operated under. And so we've, unfortunately, we've had no shortage of referrals from them. And the fact of the matter is, we will not remain empty. We will not have a single bed remain empty for longer than 2 weeks at a time.
And then could you go over again the length of stay for individuals? I think I thought you said maybe 12 months. Or
Well, we don't have a hard and fast written rule on the length of stay, but we will certainly discourage. I don't think we've ever had anybody stay after 9 months, but if someone were to get to that 12-month mark, we'd certainly discourage them from leaving at that point, because that is where they've really kind of hit the transitional period, where they would certainly, I think, be in a better position to go to an Oxford house. Because we do get somewhat concerned that there could be an attempt to kind of take advantage of our services there. It's very rare that you could find a place where you can live and have full room and board, everything else, kind of all those needs met for one price. So that offers a simplicity of lifestyle that maybe some people would enjoy without having to be addicted to a substance. But the fact of the matter is, all of our members have to be under substance abuse. That's one requirement that they're all going to have to meet, and we wouldn't let anybody out that did not meet that requirement. But that could be at minimum a self-reported requirement.
is the primary source of funding on behalf of these individuals, does it come from these agencies that refer them?
No, Not as a primary source. There is some funding that is there through probation and parole, typically at the outset. They will kind of offer some vouchers that will be needed, and I think there's some additional funding here and there for transportation, but we don't really deal with any of that funding aspect. None of that funding is directly through us, and that's all directed through the client, through the resident at that point. We don't offer any kind of middle services in that regard. We'll simply vouch for their presence there and vouch for their sobriety as we've known it to be. But to say that there's no funding there, no, I'm certain that that some of the applicants and residents are receiving funding.
So who asks an individual to leave the facility? Who is responsible for making that determination?
The house manager would be.
Okay, and then I'm just kind of curious because these applications are coming before us, and we have a category. We have group homes and transitional living facilities, and I'm just wondering why this approach to get a reasonable accommodation when we have a transitional living facility that meets the definition of what the service is being provided at this facility. So why was the reason to go with this approach?
Well, and we actually think there's some cracks there between kind of how those definitions work. And my understanding is how a transitional living facility is defined within the code is that it would, there is a provision where it would affect, if I I don't want to speak out of turn, so I want to make sure I get this correct. Whereas a group home, which I believe is what you had touched on, would be a facility in which more than 3 but less than 16 disabled persons who are unrelated by blood, marriage, or adoption reside. And that you'd think would fit our definition until you get to while receiving therapy or counseling, but not nursing care. We don't offer any of those services. We don't want to offer any of those services. That breaks into a whole separate medical and professional venture that we're not prepared to take on the risk for. Then the second definition for that would be a facility engaged in the service of exercising 24-hour daily care, supervision, custody, or control of over more than 3 but less than 16 children. And that's specifically for children. And so in that sense, we don't fit either of those definitions neatly by any means. In regards to the definition for transitional living facility, my understanding is that talks about an affiliation with a state incarceration facility. And so I believe that there is that language in there that is affiliated with either a parole or a probation release program. And while we do work with them, we by no means are anchoring ourselves to them. We don't want to be exclusive in that regard because there's a certain subset of the community that wants to address and deal with this problem without having to go through a probation or parole program. And we think it would be unfair to provide a service like this strictly for that group.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other questions?
I have one more question,
Okay.
and if this is not an appropriate question, let me know. When I hear about, there's a house manager and then there's, substance abuse testing that happens, and to me it seems like that is almost, I know it's not counseling and it's not, a treatment facility, but that to me almost sounds like it's a higher level of care than someone who's living independently. And so what I'm trying to figure out is when we talk about who qualifies for a reasonable accommodation, are people then placing themselves into a higher level of care because they're seeking to live at one of these homes? Is that an appropriate question? No.
Well,
does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and I guess but in that sense, that's kind of what makes them a family outside of the definition, right? They are kind of agreeing to a certain set of criteria of how to live together. If I had to go move back in with my mother, and I hope, knock on wood, that never happens, but I would have to live by her rules. And that's the similarity here. And I don't really think there's that much of a distinction between that. They're coming in here and they're agreeing to live by a certain set of rules that everybody else there is agreeing to live by, and that's what's bonding them together. That's the family. It's not because they all share the last name or because Grandpa was all in the Navy. It's not either one of those things, or they all abide by a certain religion. It's sobriety, and I really don't think that there's any reason that we would want to not consider that a reason to bond people together for.
And if, okay, I'm not gonna say. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Is there anyone who'd like to come forward and speak in support?
Hello, my name is Michael Corrado. Address is 6607 Maple Street, Omaha, Nebraska, 68104. I am the owner of Michael House, MAK Development. It's odd, having Ryan talk all about me and me not be able to chime in. But yeah, so I'm a graduate of an engineering degree from University of Nebraska at Lincoln. I've had a construction company for 15 years. I'm the owner of MAK for about 7. I've owned these houses for about 4 years, Michael House. And we have 9 houses in Omaha and 2 in Lincoln. And I started out in Omaha. And the whole reason why I started this was, I am a United States Marine, service disabled. I've always been a type of person that likes to help people, especially people that are underserved, disadvantaged. So I've, owning a construction company, I've always done construction. So I've, bought houses over the years and fixed them up. And I've had many individuals who had these disadvantages. They were looking for places to live, and I couldn't. I'd always turn them down in the past because you got to have, good credit. You have to have a good rental history. You have to have no evictions. You have to have all those things. So I had a friend that was in a halfway house, sober house, and she told me, and she was looking to move into one of my houses, and she told me that, it had bed bugs, it had roaches, it had black mold. There was children there, and there were sex offenders there. There was just all these horrible things that you hear, and I always thought, why can't it be ran the right way, So that's what I started 4 years ago. I started with a female house, and then went to a male house, and then now I'm at 11 houses. So I thought I'd maybe breeze over some of the things that you guys mentioned. So the things that are offered, so things that are different, okay? So Oxford House, great organization. They have thousands of houses across the United States. I have 11. We're similar but very different. And I don't think they do anything wrong. I think they have a huge, they service a huge need. But I saw that there was some deficiencies, just like with any business. One business might do better than another, serve a certain population better. So I don't like the idea of turning individuals down. I don't like the idea that it's up to 5, 6, 7 individuals who vote on a person to come in. I think it should be, our rules are you have to be 18 and older, and you have to have a willingness to be sober. That's the reason. So we interview them and find out, why do you want to be sober? What's the reasons? What's your goals? What are you trying to do in 6 months, 1 year, 5 years? And we want to find that it's a good fit between us and them. Because ultimately, right, if we have 6, 8 individuals living in a house, if you have one person that's using in that house, that in hours, everybody could be using in that house. So that's the reason why we want to do the urinalysis test, is because as soon as it's found out that someone is using, we want to help get them the treatment that they need. We send them to the right individuals to help them with that. If they're willing and able to come back and have a clean result from a detox place, we will take them back, depending on the circumstances, But So let's see. Okay. So like funding sources. So when I started, it was 100% self-pay. But over time, you find out there's a lot of great organizations out there that chip in. So probation, parole, DHHS, Region 6, they gave us a grant that expires in September, strictly for to help with individuals. We work with many churches, a lot of charities that pay maybe their first month's or 2 months rent. And actually, the individuals pay weekly. They don't pay monthly because monthly is pretty difficult. So really, it's $175 a week. Which is pretty cheap because most places want 2.5, 3 times the rent in order to qualify, and they also want full deposit, so you don't ask for a deposit. Let's see. So services we provide. So instead of it being 9, it's actually 8 individuals plus a manager. So it's a live-in manager, and we also have full-time employees that are paid that visit 3 to 4 times a week, making sure the manager is doing what they're supposed to be doing and everybody else is supposed to be doing what they're doing. So not only is it room, board, furnishings, TV, we have Wi-Fi, we have washer, dryer. They don't have to pay for laundry soap. They don't have to put coins in the machine. It's really, they show up with their suitcase and they're ready to go. Their first week, so right when they meet with us, we make a transition plan right away. So it's okay. Do you have employment? Most of them, I'd say 90% of them, do not have employment when they come to us. So a lot of them don't have a driver's license or birth certificates or social security cards. So we'll either pay for that up front for them, or we'll go to an organization that will provide that. And then by the end of their first week, second week, they're already applying for jobs, which right now it's a great market for that. So 90% of our people are employed within the second week. And these are the things that we do different than Oxford House. They don't do those kind of things. And then as the weeks go on, we meet with the individuals and talk to them about a plan. As mentioned that we're not looking for, it's not a permanent solution. We're not going to have people living in there for 5 years. It's we ask for a 30-day or 90-day commitment. So when they come in, we ask, hey, we like you to be here for 90 days, and those 90 days usually helps those individuals save up for first month's rent, first month's deposit, and then we also act as a reference for that individual to move to an apartment. Say, yep, Mr. Smith has been paying his rent. He's been great, been working, all those things. So as the weeks go on, we talk about, okay, how much money do you have saved up? When's your next paycheck coming in? 2 weeks? Okay, how much is your check going to be? $400? Okay, how about we put away $150 this week? Okay, and then we make a plan, $300 the next check saved up. So we kind of see where they're at, and we help them transition. We help them apply for apartments. So like these individuals, right? They're not. Not all of them, of course, but they come from much different backgrounds than a lot of us here. They don't have the network. They don't have the connections. I've been here a long time. I've been in Nebraska a long time. I know where to go when I need help. I have family for that. These individuals, they're coming with a trash bag full of clothes, or maybe not even that. So they don't have nowhere to go. So the idea is to help build up their resources, and that's where like the brotherhood or the sisterhood kind of comes in, is other guys in the house, like why it's a family. It's because hey, I've been there, I've done what you've done. I was you 6 months ago, or if in the manager's case, I was you 3 to 5 years ago. The employees that I have working for me, they're either graduates from the program or they've been sober for a long time. So they talk to the individual and say, hey, I understand what we're going through, and it's that shared stress, that shared common ground that helps them persevere and go to that next step. I think I hit everything. If you guys have any questions.
Thank you very much for coming down. Now we'll take testimony from others.
I have a couple
Oh,
questions
you-
for Michael.
Oh, so sorry.
So thank you very much. I just, you mentioned the situation of your friend who was in a halfway house, and so then that got me thinking, so when you accept individuals into these homes in the neighborhoods, do you do a criminal background check, or is everyone very forthcoming? Do they have to alert you and let you know that they're a known sex offender or things like that? Or is there any type of person that you would not accept?
Yeah, so the people that we would not accept are individuals that we feel that do not have the mentality of being sober, of not being able to abide to the rules that we have. We read the rules, and they sign those rules. It's kind of like an interview. It's almost like a job interview, a fitment interview. But no, I don't think it's a good idea to exclude someone for making a mistake, that they're seeking help, that they're trying to do better. I think it's better to look at, what are you doing towards that goal, and how are you changing your ways. And but we do turn individuals down. And when we do, we'll say, hey, this is the reasons why. I'd like for you to work on this and this, and come to apply back. But also, there's other agencies that would accept those people, so we would refer to them, say, hey, maybe they would be a better fit. And I'm sorry, you had another question.
Well, I mean, did you do criminal background checks
yes.
on individuals?
So background checks, yes, we do background checks. We also do a UA when they show up.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times the individuals come from a detox center, so then they actually give us a certificate saying that they tested that day or the day before. So yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. If there's no more questions from council, we'll entertain testimony from others. Anyone willing to speak in support, please come down first. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition?
Hello, my name is Robert Way. It's not really opposition. I heard a lot of great questions from the council, but I actually been involved in a similar program here in Lincoln for 4 years. The only question I didn't hear is parking. And if you're going to put 9 people in a house, parking is something I'd want to know about, because I ran into that at the place I ran. There's my address, 7205 Oxford. Been a while. I hope this can work out for everybody, but that's what clicked in my head.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak?
I lost my crutch.
Take your time.
Terry Pope Gonzalez, founder of the South Sauk Creek Community Area Neighborhood Association. I founded it in 2010. I'm from Denver, Colorado, but my husband is from here. He graduated Lincoln High in 1971, born Good Friday, April 3rd, 1953, when St. Elizabeth was on South Street, if you're old enough to know. My father-in-law graduated Lincoln High in 1942, born 1922. My mother-in-law, 1925. We are on the homestead of the Gonzalez family. Now the People's City Mission, we're first at Nell, there, crossed O Street, you guys figure it out. Now, 4 years ago, the bald-headed governor, Pete Ricketts, he said that He didn't want Lincoln, Nebraska to be a welfare state. You're not. You're a convict state. People City Mission used to be a homeless shelter. It's not anymore. It's Nebraska State Penitentiary is where they go. So that's over here. Then we've got Matt Talbert's up here. Then we've got Center Point over here. And we've got someplace else. Which, listen, I don't feel well. Now, all of them get funding and HUD housing and Section 8 and this and this and this and this and this. So these people are going to come in and say, oh, they're going to help. Well, you know, I've been here for a long time. I don't see any help. If I had been prepared, because see, this comes out in the paper. You don't have to get a agenda here. It comes out in the paper. I would have called the police department and the fire department and said, please show up. Please tell Jane, Benny, James Michael, Sandra, Richard, Tammy, and Tom, right? Okay, listen, I can barely say my name. Don't have me spell yours, okay? Now, Now these guys say they're going to do wonderful things. Really? Let's see. In the years I've been here almost 30 years. Our gas has been stolen. Our tires have been sliced. Our windows have been knocked out. Every shed I own on 3 lots has been broken into. Let's see, the Lincoln, the 402-441-6000 dispatch knows my name. 911, if you ever call them, here's what they say. Is this an emergency or can you hold? Here's what I say, because I'm pretty mouthy. I'm waiting for pizza, okay? Because see, if you do not take the time to take care of your police department, your fire department, your first responders, how many times does Station 3 firemans go down to the People's City Mission? It is not a city mission. It is a transitional housing. Now, is it 4 years ago or 5 years ago? You guys are politics, I'm not. Because if I was, guess what? Things would be run different. This is what he said. He said he cannot get enough corrections officers. That means jail. Well, if they can't keep them in jail where they belong, okay, so they're going to come out of jail. And Jane Raybould, who I really don't care for, but that's okay. Her and I are okay on this one. What are they going to do when they steal your stuff? Who are you going to call? Who are you going to call when they steal your stuff? Do you know how many times I've called the Lincoln Police Department? Why don't you guys check? It's over 10,000 times. And it has to do the People City Mission, Center Point, Matt Talbert. What's that other place? They got another place. I have Carol's, she's 4 houses from me, House of Prostitution. Dave, he's a captain, Booker had to come because somebody got raped. You know why they get raped? Then they come to my house. So if things really work,
1 minute.
it doesn't work. Whatever's happening does not work. Now, we're not going to lose my house, okay? Some people have stepped up and said, hey, there's no reason we should lose. And when you put the concrete company in by my house, there are going to be lawsuits. But it does not work. I don't care how much that man said it does. It doesn't. So, am I done yet?
32 seconds.
Okay, 32 seconds. I want to say thank you. I really have appreciated you guys. I have not appreciated the disconnect that you guys have done from me. See, I don't internet. You know why our house is how it is? We don't have an email address. But hey, I'm not one of you. I don't internet. I don't want to internet. And this stuff does not work. And I'll be back up here his next thing. I told him coming in. It does not work. Here, let me write. Am I done?
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Gonzalez. Is there anyone else who'd like to come forward? Either in support or in opposition? Seeing no one coming forward, the applicant can come back and a short rebuttal.
Thank you.
And I would ask that you would at least address the question that Mr. Way brought forward.
Absolutely. In regards to parking, and I guess just to kind of remind what's being addressed here is we're asking for a reasonable accommodation under the Fair Housing Act. And what that would essentially say is that we want you to treat us like a family. And we don't want you to treat us any different than a 9-person family would be treated. And the fact of the matter is, if you have a 9-person family that comes home for Thanksgiving, you might have a little bit of a parking problem. But the difference that we can tell you is that the majority of the people that we have to deal with usually don't have transportation when they come see us. So the parking issue becomes very rare. Now, the idea is that hopefully after several weeks to a couple months, they will have at least some form of transportation that they can secure on their own. That would be a great thing for them before they depart from us. But typically, what we've noticed is that usually kind of goes on a revolving basis with our clientele. Our initial clientele that will come in within about 3 to 6 months may acquire vehicles on our own. Then once they start transitioning out, they're leaving as we have new clientele coming in. So generally speaking, only about half our clientele at any given time are operating motor vehicles. So in a house where we're dealing with 9 occupants, that may have a little bit higher capacity of motor vehicle ownership than maybe a 2 or 3 person family would, of course. But really, when you look at that, you're only looking at possibly 2 additional vehicles. And so that sense, we haven't seen parking be an issue yet. But we understand that if that were really to change, that a parking pad may be necessary somewhere along the line. But that issue hasn't been addressed to us yet. It hasn't been a problem that's been cited to us yet at this point. But we are aware and we're conscious of it. So I just want to let the council know that we are aware, that we are conscious of that issue. And to the extent that it becomes a problem and starts impinging on the neighborhood, that we plan on addressing it.
Staff questions or?
Yeah. Do we have questions for staff?
I do.
I have one more question for.
Go ahead, Mr. Bowers,
and
and then we'll ask staff to come forward.
I don't know if this is a question, but if you could just respond to it, I would appreciate it. One of the things that I'm trying to get my brain right to do is, I guess a couple weeks ago we had a reasonable accommodation that came through, and it seems like a lot of these reasonable accommodations are more individual based, and this reasonable accommodation seems to be more like building based. And so I'm just trying to make that shift in my mind, right? Like the individual who shares and says why they need an accommodation compared to folks that have not been identified yet. Is that common?
No, and I guess I can address that and maybe give you an understanding of why it's being addressed this way than having the individual or occupant or resident of the house come forward. The Fair Housing Act, as well as the American for Disabilities Act, allows entities or groups to come on behalf of other persons. And that allows our residents and our applicants to stay anonymous in their struggles. And we can come forward and speak on their behalf. So while you may see me and you may see the owner kind of represent this group, understand that there is a long line of anonymous people behind us who suffer. And out of respect for their pride and their recovery, it would be unfortunate for them to have to bring this issue to you as each individual. So we're bringing this issue for them. And so I guess I would just like you to look at it from that perspective.
Yeah, I guess it wasn't so much like the privacy and confidentiality of the folks that are currently living there, but essentially in a year and a half from now, you're going to have a whole new crop of people in all of your facilities, or in all of your homes, I apologize. And so I'm just trying to get my mind around identifying the reasonable accommodation for folks that do not yet live in your homes.
Sure. Well, you should know that anybody who's going to be an occupant of our home would be disabled under the Fair Housing Act, as well as the Americans for Disabilities Act, or American Disability Act, because of the nature of their addiction and their alcohol or alcoholism. And so that is, understand that nobody is ever going to occupy our house that is not going to be disabled under that moniker.
Thank you.
Thank you. If there's anything else, thank you for your time.
Staff questions.
Staff questions.
And I don't know if it's Abby or Tim C. It's a question on the number of individuals that are permitted in a transitional living facility and the difference between this type of definition of family and the structure that they're trying to maintain.
Good afternoon, Abby Luttrell, City Law Department, 555 South 10th Street. I don't know that I completely understand your question.
I guess, is there a limit of the number of individuals in a transitional living facility? Is it maxed out at 4 or 5 or 6? I just don't recall.
Without having the code right in front of me, there are limits on the number of people. I think it's based on square footage, living spaces, sleeping spaces in the home. So there is a limit for transitional living facilities.
Okay, and I'm just trying to wrap my head around the distinction between these two and why a transitional living facility would not be the route to go, even though some of the facilities that have been presented to us also have an individual who is in the house 24/7 or at least overnight. So
I would just, I guess, say that there is not a limit on the number of people that can be in a family, and that is the request before the council right now, and that there are family situations where there is a paid staff member that lives in the house, so that might be a comparable situation.
okay, thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Thank you, Ms. Luttrell. Okay. Seeing no further questions, let's move on to the next item.
I'll be calling item 5C, miscellaneous 22009, application of MAK development to allow for a reasonable accommodation under chapter 1.28 of the Lincoln Municipal Code to allow 9 unrelated persons to reside together as a family, as that term is defined in the Lincoln zoning ordinance on property generally located at 5203 Walker Avenue.
Thank you again.
Welcome back.
And I will be brief and concise, obviously, so we don't reinvent the wheel. For the record, Ryan Watson, Wagner, Meehan, and Watson for MAK Development, and my address is 115 South 39th Street, Suite 202, Bellevue, Nebraska. This is essentially the same request as the last time. There's no real distinction between these two properties other than kind of what the surrounding zoning areas there are, which we reviewed with the Planning Commission. So I would essentially ask the council to make take my same request that I had repeated for the prior action item, and unless the council has any additional questions for this particular property, I will go ahead and take my seat. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Watson? Is there anyone else who'd like to testify on this application?
Terry Pope Gonzalez, homeowner, homestead owner, founder, South Salt Creek Community Area, no, what am I? South Salt Creek Area Neighborhood Association. First time around, he didn't say disabled, not till the very end. So, what kind of disabled? They need crutches, they need oxygen, they need, and he's not going to have 24-hour care, right? I think that's what I heard him say. I don't know. I'll listen back to you guys. Now, first time around, he did not say disabled. He didn't say disabled until he got up here. So what kind of disabled? Like I said, I have been putting up with the People's City Mission for over 25 years. Okay? Now, they are no longer a homeless shelter. They are no longer a domestic violence shelter. They are now a transitional housing for the Nebraska State Patrol, Nebraska, I'm not from here, Nebraska State Patrol, whatever jail is out on that street on O Street, and whatever your other jails are. So now, I can tell you that does not work. I don't have the slightest idea what Oxford House is, but I'd like to know what disabled means, because now I'm disabled. As a matter of fact, ADA is coming in. You guys aren't compliant. That's American Disabled Act. You're not compliant, and you helped make me crippled. And you helped make my husband crippled, so thank you. I'm usually not very nice. We all know that, okay? I was when this all started. Do you know when this all started? Do you know who was on the Lincoln City Council? Shoecraft, Jerry Shoecraft. What a nice man. Sad part was, he wasn't the right color. Now see, he knew something was wrong with what was going on over in my neighborhood. 4 houses down from me, we have, that came from the transitional housing, we have sex offenders. 4 houses this way, we have Carol's House of Prostitution. Then we have, whatever on that corner is, First and L, 33 pounds of methamphetamine that the Lincoln Police Department through the Denver Police Department caught October 2020. See, I didn't really know what this meant when I read it in the paper, but I knew I better get my butt out of bed and up here. If I'd have had more time, I'd have had every fireman, every policeman, because what's going to happen when that group doesn't work? At the People City Mission, oh, and what are they called? Center Point? They're all what? Nonprofit. They get HUD housing, Section 8 housing, all those things. So see, that's what this man's going to do. Sure he is. Now, the governor was correct when the governor said the state of Nebraska, the city of Lincoln, Nebraska, was turning into not a welfare state, a convict state. Do you know how many times I have to shoo off the convicts? Now, I suppose that's not what you're supposed to call them, but a convict, if you went to jail, to me, you're a convict. I'm not a convict, not yet anyway, right? Getting close, right? No, hopefully not, hopefully not. That was a joke, please laugh. Now, listen to me. You guys do, and you're gonna do what you're gonna do. But you understand that those little old ladies that you ruined, now it wasn't you guys, it was Jonathan Cook. That's where our city councilman was. He's the one. And Jeff Fortenberry. He was the city councilman 2000, 2005. Here was the line of crap he fed us. I didn't cuss, I said crap. It was gonna be a temporary batch plant. We're going on 23 years. We have the People City Mission. We have Center Point this way. Oh, and I'll be back up, how many, 2 seconds?
1 minute.
Okay, I'll be back up about the railroad, because I want to know who's going to have the liability. Because guess what? Just because we did have attorneys. You know we had? Jeff Fortenberry, not Jeff Fortenberry, no, Jeff Kirkpatrick, before he played politics. And so I'll be back up to say I like this guy. But anyway, no, do I like to come up here in front of you guys? No, not at all. And am I crippled now? Yes, thank you.
Anyone else? All right. Madam Clerk, we may move ahead. Oh, no, we take a rebuttal. If you'd like to make a rebuttal, Mr. Watson.
I would just briefly ask for the record that the council consider my testimony. I believe it was from item 5B in consideration of this item 5C as well. I just want to make that clear for the record. And I believe if the council members would come to have any concerns about any crime or recidivism in that regard from our members, I believe the planning department summary report kind of contained a review of the police response to that, and there was nothing notable by the planning commission at the time of that hearing. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Madam Clerk, we can move on.
I'll be calling item 5D, approving an interlocal agreement between the city and the City of Lincoln Lancaster County Railroad Transportation Safety District for the construction, repair, maintenance, removal, and/or replacement of railroad crossings including adjacent pedestrian sidewalks.
Good afternoon, Tyler Spahn, Assistant City Attorney, 555 South 10th Street. I'll just keep this real brief. This is a interlocal agreement between the City of Lincoln and Lancaster County, City of Lincoln Railroad Transportation Safety District. We're joined here today by Mr. Feigard from the Railroad Transportation Safety District, who can also answer any questions. This interlocal agreement really just provides a scheme and a framework where the City of Lincoln and the RTSD can enter into agreements for the RTSD to reimburse the city for any crossing related projects that the RTSD recommends the city pursue, such as closing crossings or any crossing upgrades. Under this interlocal, the city can send the proposed contract to the RTSD, and the RTSD can agree whether that is a contract that will come within the scope and whether the RTSD will reimburse the city related to that project. This agreement would only last a year, kind of a trial interlocal agreement. Our intent is, if it goes well, we could enter into an interlocal agreement maybe for a longer duration. Prior to this, it's my understanding that we've kind of been doing these agreements with the RTSD on an ad hoc basis, and this interlocal would just kind of formalize that process of the RTSD agreeing to reimburse the city for those crossing related projects. So with that, Mr. Feigard, if you want to come speak, or you have anything else?
Roger Feigard, representing the RTSD. I don't have anything else to add. This streamlines and gets rid of a little bit of duplication of paper instead of doing just, as Tyler said, individual interlocal agreements for every project that comes forward. This sets in motion a process to agree for those. It's been reviewed certainly by the RTSD attorney, and the RTSD did approve this interlocal agreement at its June 27th meeting this year. So the RTSD board, as several members sitting here today are aware of, and again, RTSD wants to continue to be a good partner with the city and the county and cost share on these projects when it's appropriate, and we can. So I'd answer any questions you might have.
Are there any questions? Oh, Councilman Dennis.
You kind of said this was a trial. Is there an expiration on this agreement?
This one is 1 year.
Okay.
Typically, the RTSD capital project budgets do not carry over. So the board must rebudget every year. And there was some concern with the RTSD attorney of obligating future boards when things need to be reappropriated year after year. But certainly, we're interested that if this works well, it could be perhaps an interlocal agreement that is entered into with a termination based on cause by either party rather than by fiscal year. And I'm hoping that we are able to do that in the future.
Yeah, I see that. And we can even do it with this agreement if we want to.
Yes. If this agreement could be just reapproved every year.
So how does this work? It said for an expenditure up to a certain amount at this point?
Annually, the RTSD budgets $300,000 for crossing repairs, $50,000 for the county, $250,000 in the city. And so up to that, for the city of Lincoln, $250,000 that were eligible for those, the executive director could approve that payment back to the city.
Okay, sounds good.
Any other comments, questions? All right. Is there anyone here who would like to testify in support?
Terry Pope Gonzalez, South Salt Creek Area Neighborhood Association. Roger Feigard used to be with the city. Now he's a double dipper now, so he's with the railroad. I'd like to know, there is a railroad and an underpass that goes on to South First Street, and First is 1ST. Don't write FIRST. It is 1ST. It goes from the People's City Mission past my house to, and then the railroad is owned by the railroad. The railroad is Union Pacific, Rock Island is my share, somebody else, Brookshire Hathaway. Okay, so now with that, did you guys see where it's at? Come out and see where it's at, I'll show you, okay? Who is liable for when they were walking through that tunnel, okay? The rapes in a tunnel, the stabbings in the tunnel, the shootings in the tunnel, who was responsible? Do we know? Okay, now when I read in the paper, it said J.J. Yost, who was with Lynn Johnson of the Parks and Rec. That's how I get most of my information. I read. I don't internet. I read. Anyway, it said that the Parks was responsible. The railroad owned the railroad, okay? But they didn't, something to do with the little doodad. That's why they built another thing over here, okay? Now they said J.J. Yost, Lynn Johnson of Parks and Rec were responsible. So when the lawsuits start coming in, who is responsible? City? So the paper said. You want to find out and get me back?
We would have to get you an answer after
Okay.
review.
Now, guys, I do not answer my phones, and Mrs. Sandra Washington knows that. I don't have time. I'm working with the little kids and the grandmas. But I would like to know who, because I'm tired of wasting my time being up here in front of you, okay? So please find out for me so we can start getting the tort claims and the lawsuits, okay? I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gonzalez. Pope Gonzalez.
It's actually, yeah, Pope Gonzalez.
Yes. All right. Anyone else? Would you like to a rebuttal, Mr. Feigard or Mr. Spahn? All right. Thank you very much. Seeing no one else on this topic, we can move forward.
I'll be calling item 5E, accepting and approving the report of new and pending claims against the city for June 16th through June 30th, 2022.
My name is Matthew Hutchinson, 4600 Briar Park Drive, 314. I don't really know what to say. I just know this is for Jamie Moore, and her grandfather just passed while she was sitting here, so she had to leave.
Oh.
So it's on behalf of the LPD shooting our dog on the 14th of June, and she's trying to get the medical bills paid for and the cost of the dog, and I don't really know what to say because I'm just here in support.
I know this might be asking a little bit much, but would you like to ask for a delay until Ms. Moore
I just wanted
attend?
to stay and make sure something happened since she had to go out for that.
Yeah, no, that's I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
That's hard. I think I will ask for a delay.
Okay.
On your item.
All right, thank you.
Anyone else would like to speak to this claims against the city? All right, we'll move on.
I'll be calling item 5F, reappointing of Johansi L. Christie as the city attorney for a 2-year term, effective July 21st, 2022.
All right. Would anyone like to come forward to speak on this item? Either in support or in opposition to.
Listen, you call me out of bed. The group that I have, Terry Pope Gonzalez, founder, South Sauk Creek Area Neighborhood Association, they really like him. Are you sure you just have to do 2 years? Can't we do 4 or 5 at a time? Why? You guys are it. You're the boss. Why can't you get together and say, he's done a really good job, and give him 4 or 5 instead of 2?
I'd have to ask legal counsel why we can't.
Okay, would you? I mean, isn't he done a good job? Isn't he done a good job? Okay. Now, I know, I did have to say his name. Okay. I am colorblind, young man. I only see orange. Isn't that something? And that's something that really is the truth. I only see orange. Listen, there's 2 ways to be colorblind. One, you see green. One, you see orange. So the different people, half the time, I don't know what you look like. So, but listen, we really, and a lot of those old ladies, most of the people are in wheelchairs that I deal with. A lot of the people have lived here their whole lives. They really like him for whatever reason, okay? They like him, how he's up here in front of you. They didn't like Jeff Kirkpatrick because he was my hired attorney, okay? And then he started playing politics. So, but, am I doing both or, no, we'd really like him to be. But can't you make it longer? Come on, ask somebody. Ask somebody. You guys are the bosses. You're supposed to be. Ask him if he can't be for 5 years at a time. Aren't you guys for 5 years at a time? How much are you for? 4. Okay, why can't you be 8? Huh? See you guys.
Is there anyone else who'd like to testify? We might as well answer the staff question.
Johansi Christie, City Attorney, 555 South 10th. It is my honor and pleasure to serve the city in this capacity.
Could you address the question, why can we extend your contract for longer than a 2-year period of time?
The city charter has a 2-year increments. So in order to change the 2 years, we would have to change the city charter.
Okay. And would we need to do the same thing if we chose to serve for 8 years instead of 4?
Correct.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for City Attorney, Mr. Christie?
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. I believe we've come to the end of the resolutions. Madam Clerk.
We can now vote on these items. I'll be calling item 5A. Approving a contract between the city and Downtown Lincoln Association for downtown management and maintenance services for a 4-year term. Introduced by McGinnis.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Raybold, second.
I have a quick statement.
Oh, yes, go ahead.
I was going to say, again, we all know that the Downtown Lincoln Association has done a really good job with their management of this. Company I work for and involved with, we also manage a lot of properties around town. I actually looked at this and see if it was something we would want to bid against, but we couldn't come close to the type of service that Downtown Lincoln Association does and how they do it. So that's probably why we only saw one bidder on this, because they do such a good job for such a fee. So just wanted to say that.
Thank you. All right. Let's take a vote.
Bowers?
Yes.
Raybold?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Washington?
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0. Item 5B is miscellaneous 22008, application of MAK development to allow for a reasonable accommodation under Chapter 1.28 of the Lincoln Municipal Code to allow 9 unrelated persons to reside together as a family, as that term is defined in the Lincoln zoning ordinance on property generally located at 315 North 35th Street, introduced by McGinnis.
So moved.
Second.
Second by Councilman Schob.
Any discussion?
Any discussion or comments? Raybold.
I really admire the work that these programs offer, but I'm really struggling with trying to call the good work that they do a family. And we have language in our zones that are more appropriate for this because it really is a transitional living facility to help those maintain their sobriety and really find long-term accommodation. So for that reason, I am not going to support this.
Anyone else? All right. Let's call the vote.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Raybold,
No.
Schob,
Yes.
Washington.
Yes.
Motion carried 4-1. Item 5C is miscellaneous 22009, application of MAK development to allow for a reasonable accommodation under Chapter 1.28 of the Lincoln Municipal Code to allow 9 unrelated persons to reside together as a family, as that term is defined in the Lincoln zoning ordinance on property generally located at 5203 Walker Avenue. Introduced by McGinnis.
So moved.
Second.
Second by Schob. Any comments? I'll take this moment to comment. This is a challenging situation, and I know I've already voted on the first one, and I'll be repeating my vote on the second one. But I thought I would take the opportunity to say that it is because we are being asked very narrowly for an accommodation under the Americans with Disabilities Act and the Fair Housing Act that I can vote yes on this. I agree that the activities of the house, regardless of what family is living in the house, the activities of the house closely mirror the same activities that we see in transitional living facilities, which we do have in our code in a separate area. But because they're asking for this reasonable accommodation, I will be able to say yes. Let's call the vote.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Raybold,
No.
Schob,
Yes.
Washington.
Yes.
Motion carried 4-1.
All right. Thank you.
I'll be calling item 5D, approving an interlocal agreement between the city and the City of Lincoln Lancaster County Railroad Transportation Safety District for the construction, repair, maintenance, removal, and/or replacement of railroad crossings, including adjacent pedestrian sidewalks. Introduced by McGinnis.
So moved.
Second?
Second by Councilwoman Raybold. Any comments?
Our TSD does good work.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Roger, you're good at what you do.
And I just wanted, I just wanted to add that anytime that we can increase efficiency without diminishing the effectiveness is a good thing. So thank you. Let's call the vote.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Washington.
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0. I'll be calling item 5E, accepting and approving the report of new and pending claims against the city for June 16th through June 30th, 2022. Introduced by McGinnis.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you.
Schob was second.
One of us made a second.
Oh, I'm so sorry. The second was Schob.
Yep.
Pardon me. I've already moved on. Mr. McGinnis.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to amend by removing Jamie Lynn Moore from the denied list and move her forward to next meeting and put her on pending until next meeting, I guess.
Or until such time, perhaps, when she can attend.
moved.
I realize that
Second.
that's a friendly. Thank you. Thank you very much. Raybold, second. All right. Any comments? All right. Let's call the vote.
Raybold,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Washington.
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0.
All right. Now for the main motion.
Bowers,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Washington.
Yes,
Motion carried 5-0.
thank you. All righty,
Yeah.
let's move on to this last issue.
We're calling item 5F, reappointing of Johansi L. Christie as the city attorney for a 2-year term, effective July 21st, 2022, introduced by McGinnis.
So moved.
Second.
Second by Raybold. Any comments? Well, then I'll take the opportunity to say that working with Mr. Christie has been a pleasure. His professionalism and his attention to detail has been wonderful. Thank you very much. Let's call the vote.
Raybold,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Make him
Schob,
Yes.
Washington,
Yes.
Bowers.
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0.
All right.
Down to the wire on that, right?
Yeah. All
25.
right. Thank you very much. All righty. Let's move on to the next item.
That concludes our public hearing resolution, section 5. We'll move on to section 6. Ordinance second reading and related resolutions. I'll be calling items 6A and 6B together. Comprehensive Plan Conformance 22009, application of the Urban Development Director to review as to conformance with the 2015 Lincoln Lancaster Comprehensive Plan and to approve a proposed amendment to the University Place South redevelopment plan, adding the 48th and Aylesworth redevelopment project to include approximately 115 market rate residential apartment units, the property generally located at North 48th and Aylesworth Streets, and the related change of Zone 16016A, application of 48th Street Development LLC to change from B1 Local Business District to R2 Residential District to B3 PUD with associated waivers, and property generally located at North 48th and Aylesworth Streets.
Thank you.
Good.
Well,
Good afternoon, Dan Marvin, Urban Development.
and Dallas McGee, Urban Development Department.
555 South 10th Street. I'm only up here just briefly because Dallas is retiring at the end of this month. And Dallas has served the citizens of this town for over 45 years. And his impact all over Lincoln can be seen in places like North 27th Street, 48th Street, Havelock, Antelope Valley, West O, and of course Haymarket, West Haymarket, and the downtown. Dallas will have a lifetime impact on the city of Lincoln that people will notice when they drive around the community. Some of his colleagues that work with him were here earlier, but we've run a little bit longer. But we think we have a few. In the back, if you turn around, Dallas. And I just wanted to be able to, this is the last project that I think will bring Dallas to the dais, and I wanted to be able to recognize him. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dallas.
Thank you, all of you.
On that note, Dallas, the mic is yours.
Okay. As we were sitting in the back 2 minutes ago, Dan says, I'm not going to talk about the redevelopment plan amendment when I get up. So I would have changed direction or something. I don't know. But thank you very much. I do appreciate it. It's been a real pleasure for me to work with the city for so long. But today we're going to talk about a redevelopment plan amendment that is before you. It is a plan amendment to the University Place South redevelopment plan. This plan amendment was taken to the Planning Commission in June and approved unanimously. The area in yellow is the plan area. It's a one-block area between Aylesworth and Martin, 48th and 49th. Show you what the area looked like or does look like today. We have some existing conditions. Number of little buildings in various condition. None of them are occupied. They've all been vacant for a number of years. This is actually the second phase of a redevelopment by this development team. The first phase was just south of here, adjacent to it, between Holdridge and Aylesworth, 48th to 49th. That is an apartment building and is fully occupied at this point. This project is on phase 2 of the same development team. It will include approximately 115 units, mostly studio 1-bedroom and some 2-bedroom. And we are working with the development team right now as we put together a redevelopment agreement that will address just how the city will assist with TIF, what that TIF will be used for, any other requests that the city will make of the team. That's being discussed now, and I anticipate that will be brought to you in a few weeks. I think with that, I will just conclude and say members of the development team are here today. Dominic Jensen, Andrew Willis are both here. They can provide much more detail if you'd like more detail on the development that they're proposing, but I would be happy to answer any questions you have at this point.
Does anyone have questions? Mr. McGinnis.
You said you're working on a redevelopment agreement?
Yes.
About it, how soon before we will?
I would anticipate within a month.
Okay.
It kind of depends on how we put it together, what kind of issues there are, but it'll be brought to you quickly.
Any other questions? I have one.
Okay.
I think everyone knows that I'm really interested in affordable housing. It's a critical issue in Lincoln, and I'd like to know, will this second phase include any affordable housing units?
That's a topic that we have discussed with the developer, and at this point we have not come to an agreement on whether or not it will include affordable units or whether some other consideration will be made by the developer. But they could certainly address it from their perspective and give you their thoughts. But it is something that we have discussed. It hasn't been, finalized at this point.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Would the developer applicant like to come forward?
Good afternoon. Andrew Willis, 233 South 13th Street, Lincoln, on behalf of the developer.
Dominic Jensen, 900 North 3rd Street, Minneapolis, Minnesota, with Schaefer Richardson, the developer.
First and most important, good to follow Dallas one last time. Thanks for all you've done, Dallas. So the redevelopment plan really is phase 2 for the apartments at 48th and Holdridge. From the anticipated, it will look the same. What you see there is just another very similar project, one block further north. 115 units, primarily studio 1-bedroom. 87 of them would be studio 1-bedroom, and then about 28 2-bedroom roughly. And again, from a look, it really is very similar to what I'll call phase 1, the 48th and Holdridge. So the first piece of this is the plan unit development, the change of zone. It's currently B1 and R4. It's very similar to what it was on that corner prior. And this is just an amendment to the existing PUD to extend that PUD one block further north. So it's the same PUD as phase 1. And in fact, see if I should probably put a picture up there for you. But it would really just be extending that again, one block further. We have the existing project, and then again repeating the apartment multifamily on the next block. In that PUD, we're really asking for the exact same waivers to match up with the existing PUD as it exists right now. That's increase in the height, waiver of the requirement for stormwater detention, waiving the required landscape screening for multifamily building. The one difference, and again, those are based on the current existing conditions, and everything matches up. The one additional waiver here is allowing first floor residential uses because there again we have commercial on this corner here, 48th and Holdridge. That makes sense. As this project is continued, there's not a it's hard to fill that commercial space, and there's a need for residential spaces there, and that first floor residential just makes a lot more sense. The residential portion of this building is full. They need more residential units. So as we extend that further north away from that corner, it makes more sense to have that as residential. So that's the one additional waiver under this extension of the existing PUD. Otherwise, everything is exactly the same. From a redevelopment plan perspective, again, we have 115 units. The look and feel is it's going to look substantially similar to phase one, really the same. The existing buildings that Dallas showed pictures of will be demolished, and this will be constructed. This is really, I guess, from a parking perspective, approximately 131 off-street parking, so 122 surface stalls, 9 covered garages on the east side of the building, off of opposite side of 48th Street. So it's more than the one parking stall per apartment requirement. It's about 1.14, so it exceeds parking requirements. And particularly in this case, with 87 of them being studios or one-bedroom apartments, we think that's going to be pretty ample parking. One key to this is it's really we really want to highlight the environmentally conscious construction piece of this. Energy efficiency is important. There's going to be solar power equipped as part of this building. There's going to be electrical vehicle charging stations in the parking lots. Really, the developer team really has a focus on that, looking at that from their development perspective. And included in that, not as big, but included in that also is their focus on alternative transportation. So bike storage units, really focusing on bike transportation as for the residents there. We're looking at bus stop improvements, have a new bus stop out in front. So really, that's a pretty big focus for their team. We have in here is a proposed cost about $20 million. I think every single day that goes up further and further, and so I don't know what the proposed costs are now as construction costs continue to grow. But it really is there is a need for tax increment financing to help fill that gap. But we really see this as an exciting project going forward. From the affordability, just to try to answer that, I don't have a good answer for that question. We are, like as Dallas said, we're still in discussions. I'll say that part of that is looking at some of the things that are doing to make this more affordable. Obviously, the energy efficiency, using some of that to bring down those utility costs. That's one piece of this. Another piece of this is looking at ensuring that there's no income source discrimination. If there is vouchers or anything like that, that we're looking at that's all acceptable. So there's not discriminating as far as income types when looking at potential tenants. So even though really the desire is to mimic phase one and to continue with that continuity of what phase one is and that which is market rate, there really is and again, we don't know exactly what that's going to look like, but again, there's affordability is still we're trying to include that affordability component in there, and we'll see what that looks like exactly in the redevelopment agreement. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
I'd like to clarify.
Yeah.
So did you just say that there would be no source of income discrimination and that you would be accepting vouchers at this property?
There'd be no source of income discrimination. So looking at that, again, it'd be the same background check, same application process, but there will be no, but if there is a voucher, that's an acceptable form of income. So yes, no discrimination there.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councilwoman Rabel.
And I know it's hard to say, but what is the market rate for the phase one, and what do you anticipate based on the increasing cost of construction, as best as you can in your crystal ball? What do you anticipate some of the market rates being in phase two?
I'm going to defer to Dominic on that.
Great.
one.
Well, first off, good afternoon, council members. The market rate rents for phase one range from $950 for a studio all the way up to $1,525 for a 2-bedroom. We anticipate the rents will mimic this. It'll really be driven by market conditions at the time it opens. Some of the units are smaller, so we may have lower rents for like some of the studios.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. McGinn.
I just have a
Councilman.
quick question
Go
that
ahead.
popped in my mind. You're not going to be doing any commercial on this site.
Correct.
So you'll be leasing out first floor as apartments, and they'll have their own entrances. Is that the way this will
On the
be?
parking lot side.
On the parking lot side.
Yeah, so we originally had some street front entrances in the original design. Through some community feedback, We revised that to not have any entrances off of 48th Street, so now they're just off of the parking lot side / residential side of the property.
Will those rents be different then, or do you expect a bigger demand for that or not?
Likely not for difference in rents. Typically, like in our other projects, we've typically charged maybe a premium for higher floor units. I don't believe there are many walkout units in the city of Lincoln, new construction-wise. So I guess that will depend on our marketing and leasing team if a premium should be charged there. The first phase of the project did have some commercial space that was converted from commercial to residential. In speaking with the property management team there, those units have been desirable, but there's a specific tenant base that wants to live, on street level.
Okay.
Councilman Shob.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is this thing on? Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, gentlemen, both for coming. You mentioned solar panels, and although it's exciting to hear that, I'm also interested in, let's do that differently. I appreciate that, I do, and I encourage you to look at other environmentally conscious development ideas in order to reduce the carbon footprint on your building. It sounds like you're going in that direction already, and I'm looking forward to hearing what you have to say in the future. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else? Well, thank you. We'll call you back up for a rebuttal in just a moment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anyone like to testify in support? Would anyone like to testify in opposition? Would you like a rebuttal?
I think we're okay.
All right.
Come on. We want Dallas up here one more time.
Does anyone have any questions for staff? Should I? Well, if no one has questions for staff, I'll take the prerogative of saying thank you. 45 years is a great amount of service, Dallas. Thank you.
I'm going to have to say one more thing. Thank you very much. It's really been an honor to be involved with the city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right.
We're clapping.
Let's carry on. Oh, actually, we've been sitting here for 2 hours, and we always like to take a break. After 2 hours, it's been 1 hour and 55 minutes, but let's not quibble. We'll be back in 10 minutes.
We did public hearing for A and B on that one, didn't we? So we'll come
Yes,
back.
yes. We'll be back in 10 minutes.
No, you don't want to know.
I think.
Yes, okay, I can be bribed. No, I can't.
Not on the microphone at least, right? Yeah.
Are you turning down chocolate?
What's that? I'm turning down a chocolate kiss for the record. It'd have to be a whole Hershey candy bar.
All right. Welcome back. We'll begin again. I believe we're at agenda item 6C. Madam Clerk.
Item 6C is Comprehensive Plan Conformance 22011, declaring approximately 0.56 acres of city-owned property generally located at South 27th Street in Woods Boulevard as surplus.
Good afternoon, Dan Marvin, Urban Development, 555 South 10th Street. On the screen, maybe that'll pop up, is a part of Woods Boulevard that is an extension. If you think of a typical intersection, that intersection is going to stub out in all four different directions. But the area that's outlined in the back there is City Street, and that means city maintenance, that means snow removal, it means paving, and as part of this project, the Bishop Heights project, LTU wanted to know if the developer would retain this property with attached easements so that for all practical purposes, residents that are going back to the apartments back here or any of the other businesses, it would function just like Woods Boulevard does presently, but it would not be owned by the city. It would be maintained by the developer that's doing the Bishop Heights project, and they've been agreeable to taking on that responsibility. And then down on South 27th Street, there's a very small parcel that is going to be, that's part of a realignment of 27th Street that would also go over onto the developer's camp too. So that's what this exchange of property is. And the surplusing, we've taken it through Planning Commission. It was on consent, went through easily. And then we've alerted all the other city departments about these particular parcels, and there's been no objection to this change. I know the attorney that represents Bishop Heights is here as well, but I'll stop there and answer any questions if you have any.
Councilwoman Ribble.
Just a quick question. So the developer of that parcel is going to be maintaining the entire street all the way to the intersection of 27th Street? So they'll be doing the snow removal, or is the city going to do that, just that little section on the corner?
Right. They would, the part that is city would still be the extension of, I think that's roughly 50 feet. There's a 50-foot from the curb of 27th Street back to this location. Would be a rough guess. It's about the number of feet that we would still maintain for city right-of-way in the intersection.
Okay. And did you say they're going to be doing a land swap, or?
No, I didn't. If I said that, I misspoke. There is also some land south that's a very tiny parcel that's part of a realignment down near the what I would call the Arby's entrance, the entrance off 27th Street. That is a remnant of a small parcel of city property. Yes.
Okay. Yes. Any other questions?
I do.
That's right. Councilman McGinnis.
I can't remember my question. Oh, put your picture
We're
back
gonna put this
up.
back up? Okay.
What's that line?
Which
that
line?
goes through there, because that doesn't represent any, the line that goes north-south.
This line here?
The one to the left, to the west, that goes outside of the buildings on the west side.
Oh,
of
to
it.
the west here?
Yeah. What's that line? Is that the redevelopment line?
Well,
it's not the property line.
So I think it's a zoning line.
Okay.
And the reason I know that is I used to be with CCNA, and the reason I thought this was 50 feet is this was zoned as R1 when the project was originally put in. So this, I believe, is a zoning line.
Okay. The old buffer.
Yeah. I have one question. Can you, if the developer picks up Woods Boulevard, which you've hatched out, does that change anything for the bank or the apartments? And so if they have an issue with winter maintenance, let's take the elephant here, they would call the developer, they wouldn't call the city.
Correct.
Okay. And does that in any way change other responsibilities for them? I mean, will their address change?
No.
Okay.
There's be no address. It will be Woods Boulevard.
Okay.
Addresses would be the same. I don't even know if they'll put up a blue sign to indicate, that it's a private drive, because it's 50 feet back and it's a very short distance, but
right.
It's possible.
Yeah. And is this the kind of action that neighbors would be notified of?
It's a good question, and I don't know the answer to that.
All right. Thank you. All right. I don't see any other questions from council members, so let's move on to the applicant. Mr. Seacrest.
Hello. Good day. My name's Kent Seacrest, representing the developers, the three redevelopers of this site. First of all, when we did our presentations to the neighborhood, we told them about this. This is one that the city likes to do, wants us to do more than we probably ourselves want to do, because we're just picking up a liability. However, as Dan pointed out, and if the map can show, he talks about the little bitty small triangle. That is, if it comes up, you will see the little itty bitty triangle. It's about 600 square feet. It's not big enough for anything because the setback in this area would eat it all up. So we're wanting that so that we can have a continuous line and know that we don't have to mow around something differently or worry about the trees in that area. So we are proposing in the redevelopment agreement a whole landscaping plan up and down 27th that you will see very shortly. So that lands as part of our green space. So the city wants us to take the Woods Boulevard and that little triangle so they don't have to work around funny angles, and we're willing to do that, and we did tell the neighbors that. Was there another question that you had that Dan? I'm trying to think of.
I had a question what that one line was. Was that a zone
Oh,
line,
yeah.
or is that a redevelopment line?
Back a million years ago, 1957, I think this was platted, and the original plat showed homes along 27th Street. But then they changed it, and the use permit came out, and it included all those old lots, and they became part of the shopping center. And when you approved the PUD last week, all this became the same zone. So we have the buffer built in through the PUD now, rather than having those homes. But yes, I think that he was absolutely right that that's an old zoning line, because those used to be lots. And they're still theoretically there, but with our PUD, we are getting rid of those little lots. You don't want that many driveways on 27th Street.
So
Go ahead, Mr. McKenzie.
they currently aren't lots.
They're in the legal today.
So can you build across the lot lines?
Well, in our PUD, we're showing it going away, and we are racing, and we have into the city a final plat to
A
show
different plat.
that's
Okay.
big, one big lot. So those lots, as soon as the final plat's approved, will disappear on you.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Councilman Shob.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Seacrest. A passing remark that Mr. Marvin made, he said 27th Street realignment with that one little triangle of property was.
Yeah, that's.
That kind of straightening.
Can you see that little blue area?
Yes. Yeah.
That's a triangle, we call it, and that's the piece that the city has as part of their right-of-way today, and under the redevelopment agreement that'll be here within probably 3 weeks or so, we will have it. You're going to have a separate vacation for that probably in 2 weeks or so, I would guess.
I might have misspoken, given
Okay,
the
thank you.
implication that the curb line was going to be changing, and that's not the case
I
here.
think we've all got-
Other than we're going to straighten this area out.
I think we've all gotten in that challenge where we were in the right-hand lane entering 27th Street and
Yeah.
realized our option was only Shopko.
Right, and that part's staying.
That will, what?
That right turn
Yeah.
into the Shopko, I call it the Arby's South axis.
Yes.
That will stay, so.
I was, when he said realignment, I'm going, ooh, that might get, no.
The right-of-way,
Okay.
real estate is
Okay.
changing, but not the curb lines.
All right. Thank you very
Anything
much.
else? Thank you for your time.
Would anyone like to testify in support or opposition for this item? Seeing none, let's move forward.
Okay, I'll be calling item 6D and 6E together. Item 6D is annexation 22007, application of Southview Inc. to annex approximately 26.45 acres, more or less, of property generally located at Rokeby Road and Friedman Street, and the related change of zone 22019, application of Southview Inc. from AG Agriculture District to R3 Residential District on property generally located at Rokeby Road and Friedman Street.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Mike Eckert with Civil Design Group, 8535 Executive Woods Drive, Suite 200 here in Lincoln. Come to you today with perhaps your most boring item on the agenda. This is a standard annexation and change of zone, unlike when you see me some other times. Standard annexation and change of zone for an additional 26.5 acres roughly at 77th and Rokeby Road. All of this area was covered under the Rokeby Road Coalition Annexation Agreement in terms of obligations, off-sites, and everything. So this is just continued phase of more single-family homes in Lincoln.
Any questions or comments? Councilman Shoub.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Housing, good. Boring, not bad either.
Okay, right. Thank you.
All right, seeing none, we'll call you back for a rebuttal should
Okay,
you
thank you.
wish. Would anyone like to comment on this in support or in opposition? There are two items here. We're looking at both the annexation and the change of zone. Anyone here to testify? Seeing none. Mr. Eckert, did you want to? You're good. All right, thank you very much. With that, we'll move on.
I'll be calling item 6F, text amendment 22004, request of CL Construction LLC to amend the Lincoln Municipal Code section 27.72.040, maximum height and minimum lot requirements for the H districts to amend the rear yard setback requirement for the H1, H2, and H3 zoning districts to allow a 5-foot rear yard setback when not abutting residential.
All right. Do we have a staff report or applicant who'd like to come forward on this one?
Council members, this is just a basically a text amendment to allow us to do a project for our customer Watson's Automotive. This text amendment would allow us to put in the proper size of addition to his building to allow him to have a 4-post vehicle lift to more safely work on his vehicles for all of his customers and also take care of his employees in the same manner.
David Carey, 555 South 10th Street, Director of the Planning Department. I would just add to that that the applicant asked for this this text amendment for the H3 zone. As part of the review, planning staff determined that also adding in the H1 and H2 made sense because they are similar districts. This allows for some significant flexibility on a lot of different types of lots. Where there's commercial abutting commercial, just want to note specifically that the language in this says that when there is residential abutting the rear yard, that the current 30-foot or 20% of the lot depth setback would still apply, so that we are protecting the residential if it's there. In most of these cases, there isn't residential, so this allowance provides for flexibility, and more will happen. And this is a good example of a project that could happen now without having to be restricted on their lot.
Are there any comments, questions?
Real quick, do we have PUDs that are zoned residential that may have uses on them for commercial?
Yes.
How would that be? If it's zoned residential, you won't be able to.
So if you had a PUD, the PUD itself would be the zoning that would be
considered
dictating what's happening on that property. So within PUDs, we create additional or different type of regulations, usually more flexible, to allowing those uses to coexist. And so that zoning would be what would we be looking at when those situations come forward.
Any other comments, questions for staff or the applicant? I have one. In looking at the setback requirements for H1, 2, and 3, I noticed that there's also a height, and I wanted to know, is there a height difference that you're proposing? And if not, will the proximity of a residential area and the height equation still be worked out in the same manner?
So that the height considerations for these districts is not under review for this proposal.
Okay.
That's a good point, because that can have an impact on residential. But the point there is that the setback for the rear yard still would apply with the residential, so the height shouldn't have any real impact, because it still would be the 30 feet or 20% of lot depth, not the 5 feet. So
Okay.
I think we're covered there.
All right, thank you.
Yep, sure.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Coming down.
Yep, thank you very much. Good luck with your project.
Thank you.
All righty, let's move on to the next item.
Did not. We did not have the gentleman's name.
I'll be calling items 6G, 6H, and 6I together. Item 6G is Comprehensive Plan Conformance 22008, declaring approximately 1.20 acres of city-owned property generally located at the southeast corner of North 27th Street and Layton Avenue as surplus. And the related change of zone 22015, application from urban development to change from R2 residential district to RT residential transition district on property generally located at the southeast corner of North 27th Street and Layton Avenue. And the related use permit 22005, application of urban development to allow for development for up to 20 residential units and 15,000 square feet of commercial floor area with waivers to setbacks, minimum lot size, and parking requirements on property generally located at the southeast corner of North 27th Street and Layton Avenue.
Good afternoon, Dan Marvin, Urban Development, 555 South 10th Street. This is a surplusing, which is the way urban development brings surpluses, and there are some zone changes. So let me try to explain why you have 3 items on, which for a typically we just have 1 item, which would be the surplusing. We have had, I'd say over the years, some amount of interest on this property. Here are the railroad tracks here. This land was originally became city property because of the bridge that came in here. The development of the bridge required condemnation and the city acquiring these properties through here. Then they built the little stub access road through here, which left some property with some amount of depth to them. And over the last, I want to say 20 or 30 years, this property has been held by the city, and on occasion we will get developers say, hey, you own this property, what can I do with this? it's a challenge to be able to do anything with this property for a number of reasons. Number one, there's a kind of a guideline by the city that next to industrial property, there should be some kind of setbacks. And railroad tracks are industrially zoned, so the need to be able to have some kind of setback from the tracks for these properties through here comes into play. Then, and if I can zoom in on it, what you'll see right here is kind of a shadow of a high line LES pole. So cutting through the property, you'll find that there are high-line power poles that go through there, so there needs to be an easement to be able to address that issue. So the planning department, and I know Director Carey is here and can answer some of these questions, but the planning department did go to the neighbors, did try to research if there's something that could happen on this property other than just maintaining it for city ownership. And the developable property is most likely the property that is south of the power line poles, perhaps some area on the other side. But as you approach the setback needs from industrial and as you get closer to the railroad tracks, maybe this would be more of a parking area. So it's, if we surplus this property, the goal of everything that is before you is to create some amount of clarity so that a buyer knows what they're getting themselves into, what the limitations for this property, and then we can test the waters to see if this is a developable piece of property. So I'll stop there and I'll answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Mr. Marvin. Do council members have any questions? Councilwoman Raybold.
I guess whoever gets the surplus property, are they going to be required to continue the street that is east of the access road and that is south of Merrill Street behind the houses? It looks like there's that.
Oh, this area through here?
That's Merrill Street, but then where it has like a little roundabout there or a circle? Okay, and keep going down south, yeah. You see, okay, go east.
Go east?
And the street that is off of Layton.
28th and Layton?
No.
This right here. Oh, this right here.
Yeah,
This is
thank
kind
you,
of an
Dave.
alley.
Oh,
So
that's an alley. Okay, never
This
mind.
would be
That's an alley.
a city alley. So the general thinking is that there would not be driveways that would come off of the access road, that if you did have any development on the property, that the access to the property
Would
would
be from
either
that.
come through Merrill or up through the alley.
Got it. Okay.
Okay?
Got it. Okay, thank you. So that south of there would not be developed, it would not be graded for an alley either?
This area through here?
Yes.
I think that the real estate, because you can kind of see the line there, the real estate does exist, that if they wanted to pay and put a driveway through there, I think that would be a point of access through there.
Yeah, I think it might depend on the exact proposal that comes through and how they want to do the access. There also might be an opportunity to have some parking further to the north in the area that is closer to the industrial that can't, right now we're proposing would not have residential in it. So there could be, the access could be parking up to the north too, and then they would walk into the units.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else? Seeing none? Oh,
Quick question, you said this property was obtained or bought for the bridge project. You said that some of it was condemned. Do you know if?
Well, I don't know if I'm learning I need to be very careful with the words that I use because they have legal ramifications. I don't know. This was a project that was put in. We did have discussions with the state in terms of what could this property be used for. because what if the bridge were to come down? Can we get the equipment in there to repair the bridge or to make, and all of those discussions, which have been going on more or less for the last 6 or 9 months, indicate that we can maintain the bridge long term. How we acquired the property 20 or 30 years ago, legally, I'm not sure. Whether we condemned it legally or we just negotiated and purchased the property, I'm not sure.
We're gonna do probably a good title search on that before we, because if we condemned it and we're not using it for our purpose, then it has to go back to the person we condemned it from.
I will ask Michelle to come up with an answer on that. And I will get that answer to you before you vote on it next week.
No, thank you for coming up with this. Be able to get some productive ground back in.
I mean, we do have to maintain these properties, and that means mowing and other levels of maintenance that goes with it.
Yeah.
We're not going to be replatting this at all.
Maybe.
Well, I think the way to answer that question is the use permit that's on before you today as well for consideration sets the stage for what the parameters are of a redevelopment of the property. And then once that we have to go through the surplus process, but when some type of proposal comes forward, then we'll then look at it. So it's possible, very likely, that it would probably be replatted in some way from the current organization that's there.
Lot lines might not be in the right spot.
Correct.
I think we know where the setbacks for the property lines can be.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We may call you back in a moment.
Okay.
Is there anyone here who would like to testify on this item, either in support or in opposition? Seeing no one coming forward, Mr. Marvin or Mr. Carey, would you like to? All right. Thank you. We're good. And let's move on.
I'll be calling item 6J. Approve lease agreement between City of Lincoln and Larry Wolf for the lease of space by Aging Partners for Personal and Family Services Program at 137 North 8th Street, Geneva, Nebraska, from August 1st, 2022 through August 31st of 2023.
All right. Good afternoon. Good evening. No, it's still afternoon.
It's still
Good afternoon, Mr. Jones.
Good afternoon and evening. Randy Jones, Director of Aging Partners for the City of Lincoln, 1005 O Street. This is a lease between ourselves and a landlord in Geneva, Nebraska, and that's for the purpose of providing casework services. It's entirely paid for by state dollars. No city dollars are involved.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Jones? Would anyone like to testify in support or in opposition of this item? Seeing none, we'll move on. Madam Clerk.
That concludes section 6 of our agenda. We can now move on to section 7, our ordinances, third reading and related resolutions. Item 7A is comprehensive plan conformance 22010, declaring city-owned property generally located at 1005 O Street as surplus. Introduced by Bowers.
So moved. Second.
Second by McGinnis. Any comments? All right, let's call the vote.
Raybold?
Yes.
Schob?
Yes.
Bowers?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Washington?
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0. Item 7B is amending Lincoln Municipal Code Chapter 6.02 definitions to add new sections numbered 6.02.092 to define attack, 6.02095 to define bite, and 6.02295 to define home observation by amending section 6.04.350 to specify that it shall be unlawful to sell, offer for sale, barter, or give away any puppy or kitten under the age of 8 weeks by amending section 6.04.355 to add that attacks are unlawful to be consistent with the definition by amending Chapter 6.08 Dogs and Chapter 6.12 Cats, to add new sections numbered 6.08.235 and 6.12.210 to set forth when home observations are allowed, and repealing sections 6.04.350 and 6.04.355 of the Lincoln Municipal Code as hereto existing. Introduced by Bowers.
So moved. Second.
Second by McGinnis. Any comments? Not seeing any. Let's move forward to vote.
Bowers,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
Washington.
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0. Okay, that concludes our section 7. Section 8 is resolutions. First readings are items 8A through 8H. Section 9 is ordinances. First reading and related resolutions are items 9A through 9M. And section 10 is our pending list, items 10A.
All right. As noted at the start of the meeting, this is one of 2 meetings each month where we invite residents to comment on a subject of their choosing. Anyone may speak on any issue not on today's agenda or planned for a future agenda. If there's anyone who would like to speak on an item, please come forward.
Sorry. Do I have to like say my?
Please say your name and your address, and then you may begin. You have 5 minutes.
Well, my name is Sean Phillips. I live at 4741 North 25th Street, Lincoln, Nebraska, and I just wanted to talk about like current gun violence right now and like some laws that should be brought up, especially like in our city, county, state, or possibly even our country. So like the first thing is, the NRA, obviously the biggest gun supporting, like, let's say organization ever to be created in the US. They support guns, but they go up against like gun violence, which we have seen a lot this year, especially like almost every single day. You see it happening. I think what we should do is we should put into stone a law saying you should have your like criminal record observed before you purchase a gun, because it works as like you can walk into like a Bass Pro Shop, Cabela's, Shields, buy a gun, just sign some papers and stuff and get it. And then like they do allow things like non-semi or full auto. They allow semi-auto, but they banned full auto because like it's so dangerous to mankind. And there is only one possible way to obtain a, let's say, full auto gun like an AR-15 or AK-47 that's at full power capacity with all 3 modes on it. The only way to get that is if you go through a very hard to obtain license, a manufacturer's license, or like retired military, or like police, or like, let's say, security officer. So we need to be more strict about that, and we need to like set in stone some rules saying we need to observe why you want this gun and your like criminal record, let's say. Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much.
So do I sit back down?
Yes, you can. Thank you. It gets easier the next time you come up. I promise. Anyone else like to comment? Seeing none.
I move we adjourn.
Thank you very much.
Second.
Second, McGinnis.
Raybold,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Schob,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Washington.
Yes.
Motion carried 5-0.
Meeting is adjourned.
Yep.